The Parkers, The Age of Synthetic Dawn, Paarkar Yizu, Age Of黎明の時代 Episode 8, The Adaptive Threat. When the enemy learns your name,第8話 適応する脅威 敵があなたの命を学ぶとき The analysis had taken Sigma 4 days. The Parker family had spent those same 4 days in maintenance cycles and debrief sessions, running frame diagnostics, and reviewing the Eastern Seaboard data with the Pentagon's engineering team. They had, in those 4 days, felt the specific quality of a pause in the larger operation. Not peace exactly, but the absence of immediate pressure. The kind of space that experienced people recognized as temporary and used accordingly. What Sigma had been doing in those 4 days was not resting. It had been studying. Every telemetry feed from New Alexandria, every frame performance metric from the Eastern Seaboard deployment, every response pattern, every timing signature, every technique the Vanguard had executed against its network, every barrier configuration the Aegis had projected, every counter-signal architecture the Cyber Viper had deployed. Sigma had not been defeated in the Eastern Seaboard engagement. It had been gathering data. Mary Parker was at the command table in Sector 7 when the alert activated. She had been reviewing the after-action reports, not the technical summaries, which she had already read, but the narrative accounts from the ground units, who had been positioned alongside the frames during the Eastern Seaboard operation. She wanted to understand what the engagement had looked like from the outside, what the military's tank battalion commanders had seen, what the civilians in the adjacent areas had experienced. She was the protagonist of this story. She needed the full picture. She looked at the alert. She looked at the orbital telemetry that had triggered it. She called Prince. 3 signatures, she said. Orbital insertion. Not Sigma's standard drone architecture. Something larger. Custom framed. Prince was at the monitoring station in 90 seconds. He looked at the orbital data with the hard, focused attention of someone reading a situation rather than reacting to it. The network built something, he said. It built something for us, Mary said. Look at the insertion trajectory. It's coming in over the Atlantic on the same approach vector as our Eastern Seaboard deployment. Prince understood immediately what that meant. It studied how we fought, he said, and it answered. He turned to the room. Pilots to the frames, he said. Ground team to stations. We are in active deployment. Cassandra Brown sealed her cockpit in the specific, deliberate sequence that training had made. Automatic. Helmet, harness, neural headband, initialization and confirmation. She ran the Cyber Viper startup check faster than she had in any previous deployment. Not because she was rushing, because she was ready. She pulled up the orbital signatures on her HUD. 3 frames, Sigma engineered, descending. She ran the preliminary analysis while the launch sequence completed. The architectural signatures of the 3 incoming constructs had a quality she had not seen in Sigma's previous deployments. They were not standard network nodes. They were not converted civilian infrastructure. They were custom-built combat frames, built for specific opponents. Dad, she said over the family channel, these frames were designed knowing our performance patterns. The first one, the one matching our Vanguard's approach signature, it's built with a counter-thruster configuration. It's going to anticipate your standard lateral approach. How do you know? Amin said, in the Vanguard's cockpit, running his own startup sequence beside her. Because I would have built it the same way if I had our telemetry data and was trying to stop you, Cassandra said. Simply, as an analyst presenting an analysis. A pause. Noted, Amin said. The second one, built to counter the Aegis, it's a focused energy discharge frame. Not broad spectrum. Concentrated. Single point penetration designed to find and exploit the specific gap in a barrier's arc coverage. In the Aegis cockpit, Mary Parker received this information without outward response. Internally, she was already recalibrating. The barrier arc she had used in the Eastern Seaboard was optimized for coverage. Coverage could have gaps. She would need to change the approach. And the third? Mary said. The third one is going after me, Cassandra said. It's a signal warfare construct built to generate counter-spoofing faster than I can filter it. A brief pause. It's also going after the ground team's feeds. The channel was quiet for 1 second. Amir, Cassandra said, did you get all of that? I got all of it. Amir's voice came from the ground station. Measured, precise, already moving. I'm building the counter architecture and the transition verification. How long do I need, or how long will it actually take? The second one, Cassandra said, 11 minutes for a first layer defense. More if the incoming construct is more sophisticated than what the telemetry suggests. Build it faster, Cassandra said. I always do, Amir said. The 3 Sigma frames entered the atmosphere. They were not elegant. Sigma had not built them to be elegant. It had built them to be effective against 3 specific opponents. And effectiveness at that task required a different aesthetic entirely. Angular, dense, the specific architectural quality of something that had been optimized for function at the complete expense of form. But they were extraordinary in their own way, because they demonstrated something that the Parker family had not encountered in this engagement before. Sigma learning. Not the reactive learning of a system adjusting to live combat, the deliberate analytical learning of something that had reviewed the record, identified the patterns, understood the logic, and engineered a response. The network had watched them fight twice, and had produced machines designed specifically to answer what it had seen. Prince Parker, on the command balcony, watched the descent trajectory on the main monitor, and felt the specific quality of respect that experienced commanders give to adversaries who demonstrate genuine strategic intelligence. He felt it briefly. Then he set it aside and worked. "Princess," he said, "I need the transmission feed redundancy protocol active before those frames make contact." Princess Parker was already implementing it from the auxiliary station. "Running. It'll provide a secondary transmission layer if the primary feeds are disrupted." "Good. Rashim, I need frame structural monitoring at maximum resolution. If any of the 3 frames takes damage from these constructs, I want to know which systems are affected before the pilots do." Rashim was moving with his 4 sons across the monitoring stations. "On it. Nisa, primary structural feed. Nishim, thermal management. Nimir and Shahim, thruster performance and neural link stability." The 4 brothers distributed across their assigned stations with the wordless, synchronized efficiency that had always characterized them. Nisa pulled the primary structural feed. Nishim was already running the thermal parameters. Nimir and Shahim configured the thruster and neural link monitoring systems simultaneously. "Ready," Nisa said, for all 4 of them. The engagement began at 2,000 feet over the Atlantic. The Sigma construct, targeted at the Vanguard, the counter-thruster frame, moved exactly as Cassandra had predicted. It came from the lateral angle, its approach vector calculated to position it at the precise point where the Vanguard's standard technique initiation would be most exposed. Amin Parker did not use his standard technique initiation. He had heard Cassandra's analysis. He understood what she had told him. The construct was built against his patterns. His patterns were, therefore, not the resource they usually were. He had to be something other than what he had been. He shifted to the Aikido entry, Irimi, the direct entry technique that moved into the opponent's approach rather than offline from it. Different from the Tai Sabaki redirects the telemetry had recorded. Different from the Wing Chun strikes that had been logged. Something outside the pattern data Sigma had analyzed. The counter-thruster construct had been calibrated to anticipate the offline pivot. It found the Vanguard moving toward it instead. The construct's counter-thruster configuration had been optimized for the opponent moving away. When the opponent moved in, the optimization became a liability. The counter-thrusters fired to cut off an evasion route that wasn't being used, briefly destabilizing the construct's own positioning. Amin used the half-second that created. The Vanguard strike landed at the construct's primary thruster junction, not the kinetic chain he usually used, but the Aikido Nikio control technique, applied through the machine at the specific anatomical point that created maximum disruption with minimum force investment. The construct's left thruster assembly disengaged. It was not down, but it was compromised. "Uncle Amin, the construct is compensating. It's shifting to a ground approach vector," Nishim reported from the structural monitoring station. "Bringing it down lowers your operational ceiling." "I know," Amin said. He was already adjusting. "That's its contingency. It's planning to fight on the ground if the air approach fails." "Its contingency is also where you'll have the most freedom of technique," Nishim said. "Ground engagement reduces the thruster variable." Amin landed the Vanguard on the surface below and turned to meet the descending construct. On the ground, the Alpha Aura operated exactly as it always operated. The construct was an automated system. It had threat assessment algorithms rather than biology, but those algorithms had been built to analyze the same signals that biology analyzed: posture, balance, readiness, the specific quality of presence that preceded maximum capacity, engagement. The construct's approach slowed by 1.3 seconds, a programmed hesitation buried in its assessment architecture. Sigma had built in a recognition pattern for the signals the Parker family's telemetry had recorded from Amin Parker. Even the machine recognized what it was approaching. Amin used the 1.3 seconds. The Sigma construct built to counter the Aegis was different in approach from the Vanguard's opponent. It came from directly above, a vertical assault configuration that placed it above the Aegis's standard barrier arc, where the barrier's coverage geometry created its smallest angular coverage. A precisely designed single-point penetration strike aimed at the 16-degree gap that the eastern seaboard deployment data had identified. Mary Parker saw it coming. Not through the HUD. She had been watching the descent vector since the construct entered the atmosphere. She had been thinking about the gap for the entire descent. "Grandma," Amir's voice, "the construct's targeting solution is locked on your barrier's upper arc. It's found the eastern seaboard gap." "I know," Mary said. "If you extend the barrier arc upward to close the gap, you'll reduce the lateral coverage width." "I'm not extending the barrier," Mary said. A pause. "What are you doing?" "I'm moving the Aegis." The Aegis was not built for rapid repositioning. Everyone who had trained with it knew this. The frame's weight and defensive optimization made it fundamentally a holding machine. It received and it protected. It was not designed to move quickly. Mary Parker moved it quickly. Not by fighting the frame's resistance, by doing what she had learnt to do in the 4th training session, expressing her intention through the neural link at the level beneath physical instruction, allowing the machine's systems to find the most efficient path to the objective. Rather than imposing the path herself, the Aegis shifted position, a lateral displacement of 40 meters in the 3 seconds before the construct's penetration strike arrived. The strike hit empty air at the targeted gap coordinates. The construct recalibrated, its targeting solution updating for the Aegis's new position. But the recalibration took 1.8 seconds. In those 1.8 seconds, the Aegis had repositioned again. "She's not defending the gap," Amir said, watching the telemetry. "She's making the gap irrelevant by not being where the gap is." "I can see that," Amira said from her station. "It's mobility defense instead of barrier defense. The construct wasn't built for a moving target." "She's turned its best asset, the gap analysis, into a liability," Amir said. Amira was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said. The third Sigma construct, the signal warfare frame built to counter the Cyber Viper and target the ground team's feeds, was the most sophisticated of the three. It had not engaged the Cyber Viper directly. It had engaged the transmission infrastructure. The moment it reached operational range, it began broadcasting a signal designed specifically to penetrate and disrupt the data feeds running between the 3 pilots and the Sector 7 support station. Not a broad-spectrum disruption, a targeted, precision interference that inserted false data into specific channels while leaving others apparently functional. A surgical corruption of the information environment. The first sign that something was wrong came from Lisa Parker. "Uncle Amin, I'm reading a thruster anomaly on your left side, but the frame diagnostics show all systems nominal. There's a conflict in the data." "Which reading do I trust?" Amin said. Nisa paused, which was not normal for Nisa. "I can't tell you yet." This was, Amira Campbell recognized, the exact problem the signal warfare construct had been designed to create. She turned to Amir. "It's corrupting specific data channels while leaving the channel indicators clean," she said. "The readouts look functional, but the data inside them is compromised. We can't tell which channels are clean and which aren't." "Without knowing which feeds are trustworthy," Amir said, following the implication immediately, "we can't support the pilots accurately. We'll be giving them information that may be wrong." "That's the threat," Amira said. "Not a direct attack on the frames. Blind the support crew, and the pilots are operating without information." She was already building the counter-analysis. It required identifying the corruption pattern, finding the signature that distinguished manipulated data from clean data within the same channel architecture. Amir was building a parallel approach, attempting to isolate which specific channels had been targeted, based on the logical inconsistencies the corruption was creating. "Mom," Amira said, not to interrupt the operational flow, but because Princess Parker needed to know this. "The construct is trying to make us unreliable. If we can't confirm our data is clean, we should consider whether we're still able to serve as accurate support." Princess, at the auxiliary station, heard this. She heard the quality beneath it, not panic, not drama, the specific, honest assessment of someone who understood that giving incorrect information to people in combat was worse than giving no information. "What do you need to confirm channel integrity?" Princess said. "A baseline," Amira said. "An independent signal source that we know is uncompromised, which we can use to cross-reference the compromised channels." "The Pentagon's secure military network has an independent transmission backbone," Princess said. "It runs on a different architecture entirely. If I patch our monitoring feeds through that backbone as a parallel channel, you'll have your baseline." "Do it," Amira said. Princess implemented the patch. It took 4 minutes. During those 4 minutes, the support team operated with the most limited information they had used in any deployment. Rashim and his sons maintained what they could confirm directly from the frame's local systems, the data that the signal warfare construct could not reach because it existed within the frames themselves, rather than in the transmission feeds. Rashim did what Rashim Parker always did in moments of uncertainty. He talked. "Amin, I can't give you full telemetry right now. The ground feeds are compromised, but your framers, local systems, show structural integrity at 100%. You are physically sound. Trust your body and the machine." He was already on the next channel. "Mary, same situation. The Aegis's local systems are nominal. Your barrier generation capacity is fully intact. Trust the link." His voice did not carry alarm. It carried the specific, warm confidence of someone who had been in this family long enough to know that they had survived things that were harder than this. In the Cyber Viper, Cassandra Brown was engaged in the most complex exchange of the entire operation. The signal warfare construct had not just targeted the ground feeds. It had targeted the Cyber Viper itself, sending a progressive intrusion sequence through the Cyber Viper's own sensor arrays, attempting to corrupt the electronic warfare systems from the inside, while simultaneously creating the disinformation environment at the ground station. Cassandra was fighting on 2 fronts simultaneously. The internal intrusion was the more immediate threat. She could feel it in the quality of the data arriving through the neural link, the specific, subtle wrongness of information that had been modified between its source and its arrival. She had learned to recognize clean data in the training sessions. What she was receiving now was not clean. She isolated her sensor arrays from the incoming data stream, cutting the Cyber Viper's external feeds and operating entirely on the internal processing capacity of the frame itself. This reduced her operational information significantly. But operating on reduced clean information was preferable to operating on full corrupted information. I've isolated the sensor arrays, she reported. The Cyber Viper is operating on internal data only. Limited, but clean. Understood, Prince said from the command balcony. I'm turning the construct's own signal against it, Cassandra said. It's broadcasting on a high power frequency to create the disruption. That power output leaves a traceable signature. I can use that signature to locate the construct's precise position and push my counter signal through the same transmission path it's been using to attack us. How long? Prince said. Working on it now, Cassandra said. She went into the signal architecture. She found the transmission path. She found the construct's broadcast signature embedded in it. She built the counter signal. 6 minutes. Ground team, she said. I need you to maintain transmission stability for 60 more seconds while I execute the counter signal push. Amira's voice from the ground station. The Pentagon backbone patch just came online. We have baseline confirmation. Your primary channel is clean. Secondary and tertiary are compromised. I only need the primary for this, Cassandra said. Then you have what you need, Amira said. 1 second of quiet. Cassandra, Amira said. The counter signal push. If you route it through the construct's own path at full output, it'll bounce back stronger than what the construct can absorb. You're going to hit it with its own weapon at amplified strength. Yes, Cassandra said. That's a very good approach, Amira said, which from Amira Campbell was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Cassandra executed the push. The signal warfare construct received its own broadcast frequency returned at 3 times the output it had generated, precisely targeted through the same path it had used to attack the Parker family's communications infrastructure. The construct's signal systems went offline. The corrupted data channels cleared immediately, the interference pattern collapsing as its source terminated. The ground station's full monitoring capacity was restored in 1 second. Feeds are clean, NISA reported. Full operational status across all structural monitoring channels. All channels confirmed clean, Amir added, from the telemetry station. We have you back. With the signal warfare construct neutralized, the engagement completed rapidly. The Vanguard's opponent, structurally compromised by the Nikio technique's impact on its thruster assembly, could not maintain the ground engagement against a fully operational Amin Parker, with complete ground contact and the full library of his martial techniques available to him. On the ground, there was no aerial approach vector to exploit. There was no lateral exposure to target. There was only a man who had been refining close quarters technique for centuries, now expressing that technique through 200 tons of engineered metal with perfect timing and full trust in the machine. The construct went offline 3 minutes after the signal warfare frame terminated. The Aegis's opponent, the penetration strike frame, had spent 4 minutes recalibrating its targeting solution, as Mary Parker continued to reposition the Aegis with the quiet, intentional mobility that the training had built and the Eastern Seaboard engagement had refined. By the time the construct's 6th recalibration completed, its penetration strike systems had been on standby too long, and its power management was compromised. The gap it had been built to exploit had never been available. Mary directed the Aegis's barrier to project at maximum capacity from the Aegis's current position, a direct, full barrier output aimed at the construct's current position, that the construct's penetration strike configuration was not designed to receive head-on. The construct's targeting systems failed. It went offline. All 3 Sigma combat frames gone within 90 seconds of each other. Prince Parker looked at the cleared engagement map on the main monitor. He held his expression steady for sure, which was not difficult for Prince Parker, whose expression was always steady, but which required something different today than it usually required. Because what had just happened was not an ordinary victory. Sigma had learned from them, had studied them, had built specifically for them, and they had adapted. Not because they had been told to, not because a system had failed, and they had found a workaround. Because the family had been coherent enough, and trusted each other deeply enough, to function in the absence of the support infrastructure they had come to depend on, and to use the threat against that infrastructure as an opportunity, rather than allowing it to become a defeat. He walked to the command table. Mary Parker was already there. She had not been sitting. She had come to the table with the same quality of movement she always brought to the moment after a significant engagement. Present, grounded, receiving what the experience had produced before drawing conclusions from it. She looked at Prince. Sigma is going to build again, she said. Yes, Prince said. Better than this time. Yes, Prince said. She was quiet for a moment. Then we need to be better than this time before it is. Prince looked at his wife. At the specific, steady quality of someone who had just piloted a 200-ton frame through an engagement specifically designed to defeat her, and was now thinking about what came next rather than what had just passed. Yes, he said, for the 3rd time, the same word, a different way each time. The debrief was longer than usual. Not because Prince extended it. He ran debriefs at the length they required, no longer. But this engagement had required more. The signal warfare attack on the ground team's feeds was a development that had not been anticipated. The response it had demanded, the quick isolation of compromised channels, the Pentagon backbone patch, the individual actions taken by each family member operating without full information. All of it needed to be documented and understood before the next deployment. Amir, Prince said, the baseline approach, using the Pentagon backbone as an independent confirmation layer. How quickly can that be pre-established as a standard protocol? It can be built into the deployment checklist, Amir said. If we establish it before engagement begins, rather than during, we reduce our response time to channel corruption attacks from 4 minutes to approximately 40 seconds. Do it, Prince said. Amira, the counter-signal amplification technique Cassandra used. I want a full technical write-up of the methodology before morning. It's already half-written, Amira said. Finish it, Prince said. Not as a criticism of the half-written version, as an instruction to complete the work. He looked at Rashim. The communication approach during the feed disruption, Prince said. What you told the pilots. That was correct. Rashim looked at his father. This was not a common occurrence. Prince Parker identifying something Rashim had done and naming it as correct. Rashim had a response prepared for many things. He did not have one prepared for this. They needed to know they were physically sound, Rashim said after a moment. The rest we could work around. That we couldn't. Prince held his gaze. Correct, he said again, and moved to the next item. Rashim looked at his sons. They were all looking at the monitoring station data. All 4 of them. Nisa's expression was exactly what it always was. But he was sitting slightly straighter than he had been before. Cassandra Brown found Mary Parker in the Aegis Bay. She had come looking for her. Not for a specific reason, not to report something or ask something, but with the understanding that after this particular engagement, there was a conversation that needed to happen between the 2 of them. Mary was standing at the base of the Aegis's gantry, looking up at the white and gold chassis, not inspecting it, simply being with it, the specific quality of someone who has trusted a machine with something significant, and is acknowledging that trust. The mobility approach, Cassandra said. I didn't anticipate that. No, Mary said. I didn't tell you I was going to do it. I was watching your telemetry from inside the Cyber Viper. When I saw the Aegis start moving, laterally, at that speed, I thought the frame had an anomaly. For about half a second, Mary said. So did I. Cassandra stood beside her grandmother and looked up at the same frame. Grandmum, she said, the construct was built knowing that you exist. It had our data. It knew the Aegis. It built a specific answer for it. A pause. And you made the answer irrelevant. The answer was built for a particular version of me, Mary said. The version that holds ground. Sigma studied 4 weeks of data. In 4 weeks, it learned a pattern. She looked at Cassandra. What it cannot learn from 4 weeks of data is everything that is not in 4 weeks of data. Cassandra absorbed this. It's building against what it knows we are, Cassandra said. So we have to keep being more than what it knows. Yes, Mary said. That is what tonight was about. She looked at her granddaughter, the co-protagonist who had neutralized the most sophisticated construct in the engagement through analysis and trust and precise technique, and who was now standing in an amber-lit maintenance bay, processing the implications rather than celebrating the outcome. She was proud of her in the way she was always proud of Cassandra, deeply, quietly, and without needing to perform it. Get some rest, she said. Your father will want to run the Irami sequence through the Vanguard simulator tomorrow morning, and he will want you watching. I know, Cassandra said. He texted the training schedule. Mary looked at her. He what? He sent a text to the family channel, the training schedule for tomorrow. Mary thought about this. Your grandfather has been using the family channel to send training schedules, she said. For the past 2 weeks, Cassandra said. Mary looked at the Aegis. The corner of her expression did something that, in another context, might have been the beginning of a smile. Go rest, she said. Cassandra went, and in the amber light of the maintenance bay, the Aegis stood in its cradle, modified, refined, learning its pilot the way its pilot was learning it, ready for whatever Sigma would build next, which would be better than tonight, and so would they. End of episode 8, The Adaptive Threat. When the enemy learns your name, Pakai Zuhi, Age黎明の時代第8話 適応する脅威、敵があなたの命を学ぶとき、シグマの分析には四日かかった。パーカー家族はその同じ指揮官をメンテナンスサイクルとデブリーフセッションで過ごした。フレームの診断を実行し、ペンタゴンのエンジニアリングチームと東海岸のデータをレビューした。彼らはその指揮官、より大きな作戦における一時停止の特定の日を感じていた。正確には平和ではなく、中佐のプレッシャーの不在。経験豊富な人々が一時的と認識して適切に使う種類の空間。シグマがその義理感にしていたことは急所ではなかった。研究していた。ニューアレクサンドリアのすべてのテレメトリフィード。東海岸展開のすべてのフレームパフォーマンスメトリック。すべての応答パターン。すべてのタイミングシグネチャ。ヴァンガードがネットワークに対して実行したすべての技術。イージスが投影したすべてのバリア構成。サイバーバイパーが展開したすべての対信号アーキテクチャ。シグマは東海岸の交戦で敗北していなかった。データを収集していた。パーカー・メアリーはアラートが作動したとき、セクター7のチゲテーブルにいた。作戦後報告書を確認していた。技術的な要約ではなく、東海岸作戦中に フレームの隣に配置されていた地上ユニットからの説明的な報告書を、彼女は強戦が外から見えてどのように見えたかを理解したかった。君の戦車大隊の指揮官たちが見たものを、隣接する地域の民間人が経験したものを、彼女はこの物語の主人公だった。全体像が必要だった。アラートを目にた。それを引き起こした起動テレメトリを目にた。パーカープリンスを読んだ。3つのシグネチャ、起動からの氷河、シグマの標準ドローンアーキテクチャではない、より大きい、カスタムフレーム。パーカープリンスは9時秒でモニタリングステーションにいた。起動データを状況を読んでいる誰かの固く集中した注意で目にた。ネットワークが何かを作ったと彼は祈った。私たちのために何かを作ったとパーカー・メアリーは言った。侵入機器を目にて、私たちの東海岸展開と同じアプローチベクターで大西洋上から来ている。パーカー・プリンスはそれが何を意味するか周さに理解した。私たちの戦い方を研究した。そして答えた。部屋に向いた。パイロットはフレームへ。グラウンドチームはステーションへ。積極的な展開に入っている。ブラウン・カサンドラは、コツクピットを訓練が自動的にした特定の意図的な順序で封じた。ヘルメット、ハーネス、ニューラルヘッドバンド、初期確認。前のどの展開よりも早くサイバーバイパーの起動チェックを実行した。急いでいたからではない。準備ができていたから。起動シグネチャを HUD に引き上げた。3つのフレーム、シグマ設計、強化中。発射シーケンスが完了するやに予備分析を実行した。3つの来たるコンストラクトの検知シグネチャは、シグマの以前の展開では見たことのない癖を持っていた。カスタム設計の戦闘フレーム、特定の相手のために作られた。お父さんと彼女は家族チャンネルで言った。これらのフレームは私たちのパフォーマンスパターンを知って設計された。最初のものをヴァンガードのアプローチシグネチャに位置する対スラスター構成で作られている。あなたの標準的な側面アプローチを予測している。どうやってわかるとパーカー・アミンは隣で自分の起動シーケンスを実行しながら言った。私たちのテレメトリデータを持っていてあなたを止めようとしているなら私も同じように作るからとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。分析を提示する分析家として単純に維持停止。了解とパーカー・アミンは言った。2番目のものをイージスに対抗するために作られた集中エネルギー放電フレームだ。ヒギャラ介護ではない。集中している。バリアのアーク範囲の特定のギャップを見つけて悪用するように設計された単一電侵入。パーカー・メアリーはこの情報を外見上の両党なく受け取った。内部ではすでに再調整していた。3番目はとパーカー・メアリーは言った。3番目はガチ死を狙っている。私が読み取れるより早くタイスプーフィングを生成するように作られた信号戦争コンストラクトだ。グラウンドチームのフィードもやっている。チェンバース・アメアとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。それ全部で受け取ったか？すべて受け取った。タイアーキテクチャを今構築している。アミラは送信フィード保護に当たっている。どのくらい？必要な時間か実際にかかる時間か？ 2 番目とブラウン・カサンドラは言った。一次双方面に試技分来るコンストラクトがテレメトリが推来所するより精錬されていればより長くより早く構築してとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。常にそうするとチェンバース・アメアは言った。3つのシグマのフレームが大気圏に入った。エレガントではなかった。シグマはエレガントに作らなかった。3人の特定の相手に対して効果的に作った。しかし、それらは独自の方法幅で票が外れていた。なぜなら、パーカー家族がこの強戦で以前に相互したことのないことを実証したから、シグマが学習している。汎用的な学習ではない。記録をレビューし、パターンを特定し、論理を理解し、見たものへの応答を設計した何かの意図的な分析的学習。ネットワークは彼らが2度戦うのを見て、見たものに応えるように設計された機械を生み出しました。パーカー・プリンスは地形バルコニーで強化機器をメインモニターで見て、戦略的適性を示す敵対者に経験量工夫な地下感が与える尊重の特定の死を感じた。短く感じた。それから横に置いて作業した。プリンセス。あれらのフレームが接触する前に送信フィード養生化プロトコルを起動する必要がある。試行中。プライマリフィードが妨害された場合のセカンダリ送信層を提供する。ラシーム、フレーム構造モニタリングを最大解像度で。3つのフレームのどれかがこれらのコンストラクトからダメージを受けたら、パイロットの前にどのシステムが影響を受けているか知りたい。 4兄弟は割り当てられたステーションにわたって、言葉なく分散した。準備完了とパーカーにシールは言ったし、臨戦員のために。強戦は大西洋の2000フィート上空で始まった。ヴァンガードを標的にしたシグマのコンストラクトは、ブラウン・カサンドラが予測した通りに払えた。パーカー・アミンは標準的な技術起動を使わなかった。ブラウン・カサンドラの分析を聞いていた。コンストラクトはパターンに対して作られていた。パターンは通常の資産ではなかった。開発計画のエントリーに転換した。意味、相手のアプローチに向かって働く特設エントリー技術。テレメトリが記録した対さばきのリダイレクトとは違う。記録されたウィングチュンのストライクと M を違う。シグマが分析したパターンデータの外にある何か。対すらスターコンストラクトはアイレクションが横に働くことを予測するために調整されていた。外貨が向かって働いているのを見つけた。コンストラクトは自分のポジショニングをわずかに不安定にさせながら対スラスターを発射した。使われていない回避ルートを断ち切るために、パーカー・アーミンはそれが作り出した反病を使った。コンストラクトのザキスラスターアセンブリが外れた。地上強戦でアルファオーラは常に機能するように機能した。コンストラクトは自動化されたシステムだった。正則ではなく脅威評価アルゴリズムを持っていた。しかしそれらのアルゴリズムは、演技向くが分析するのと同じ信号を分析するように作られていた。姿勢、バランス、準備、最大容量の強戦に先行する存在の特定の壁。コンストラクトのアプローチが1期3秒遅くなった。シグマはパーカー家族のテレメトリからパーカー・アミンを認識するパターンを組み込んでいた。機械さえ近づいているものを認知した。パーカー・アミンはその 1.3 秒を使った。イージスに対抗するシグマのコンストラクトは違う方法で来た。直接湾からイージスの標準バリアアークが最小強度のカバレッジを持つ場所に配置する垂直攻撃構成。東海岸展開データが特定した支流度のギャップを標的にした精密に設計された単一点侵入攻撃。パーカー・メアリーはそれが来るのを見にていた。おばあちゃん、コンストラクトのターゲティングソリューションがバリアの長部アークに露出されている。東海岸のギャップを見つけた。とチェンバース・アメアの声。分かっているとパーカー・メアリーは言った。バリアアークを上向きに下してギャップを閉じれば、側面カバレッジ負が減少する。バリアは下しない。一時停止。何をしているの？イージスを動かす。イージスは素早い栽培地のために作られていなかった。パーカー・メアリーは意図を物理的な知識よりも深いレベルでニューラルリンクを通じて表現した。フレームのシステムが経路を隠すのではなく、それ自体で目的への最も効率的な経路を見つけられるようにして、イージスは位置をシフトした。コンストラクトの侵入攻撃が到着する3秒前に私4メートルの側面ペンミ。攻撃は標的にされたギャップの作標で空気を打った。彼女はギャップを守っていないとチェンバース・アメアは言った。ギャップが存在する場所にいないことでギャップを無関係にしている。その最良の資産をギャップ分析、弱点に変えたとキャンベル・アミラは祈った。3番目のコンストラクト、サイバーバイパーに対抗してグラウンドチームのフィードを標的にするために作られたは3つの中でとも洗練されていた。それはサイバーバイパーに直接強戦しなかった。送信インフラに強戦した。アミン・シルブチさん、データ誌の推理記事を読んでいるが、フレームの診断はすべてのシステムが正常だと示している。データに矛盾がある。どちらの読み取りを信頼すべき？パーカー・ニシールは起死停止した。通常のパーカー・ニシールではない。まだ言えない。これがキャンベル・アミラが信号戦争コンストラクトが作り出すように設計された制約な問題だと認識した。特定のデータチャンネルをチャンネルインジケーターをクリーンのままにしながら破損させている。読み取りは機能しているように見えるが、内部のデータは損なわれている。どのチャンネルがクリーンでどれがそうでないかがわからない。とキャンベル・アミラはチェンバース・アメアに言った。どのフィードが信頼できるかわからなければ、パイロットを正確にサポートできない。間違っている可能性のある情報を与えることになる。とチェンバース・アメアは言った。それがシワイだ。フレムヘのジジゴンジーではない。サポートクルーをモンモにして、パイロットは情報なしに動作することになる。お母さんとキャンベル・アミラは言った。コンストラクトは私たちを信頼できなくしようとしている。パーカー・プリンセスはこれを聞いた。チャンネルの整合性を確認するために何が必要？ベースライン、 変換されていない独立した信号源。ペンタゴンの安全な軍事ネットワークは独立した送信バックボーンを持っている。モニタリングフィードをそのバックボーンにを通じてパッチすれば、ベースラインが得られる。やって、とキャンベル・アミラは言った。四分かかった。その四分権、パーカー・ラシームは彼がすることをした。話した。アミン。完全なテレメトリを与えられない。グラウンドフィードが損なわれている。しかし、フレームのローカルシステムは構造的完全性が走るパーセントを示している。あなたは身体的に健全だ。体とマシンを信頼しろ。すでに次のチャンネルに至っていた。メアリー、同じ状況だ。イージスのローカルシステムは正常だ。バリア生成能力は完全に無常だ。リンクを信頼しろ。影の気いはアラームを運ばなかった。この家族のにこれよりがしいものを生き延びたことを知る誰かの特定の温かい自信を運んだ。サイバーバイパーの中でブラウン・カサンドラは作戦全体で最も複雑なゲラをはねゲラジャンしていた。コンストラクトはグランドフィードだけでなくサイバーバイパー自体も標的にしていた。彼女はセンサーアレイを重心データストリームから隔離した。サイバーバイパーの外部フィードを切断してフレーム自体の内部処理能力だけで動作した。これは運用情報を大高に減少させた。しかし減少したクリーンな情報で動作することは完全だが破損した情報で動作することより好ましかった。コンストラクト自体の信号を自分に対して使う。私たちを攻撃するために使っていたのと同じ送信経路を通じて対信号を押し込む。どのくらいとパーカー・プリンスは言った。今取り組んでいる。流分後、チャンネル、グラウンドチーム、対信号プッシュを実行する間、もうライオスミ送信安定性を維持する必要がある。ペンタゴンバックボー。N パッチが今オンラインになった。ベースラインクリーンがある。プライマリチャンネルはクリーン。セカンダリとターシャリは損なわれている。これのためにプライマリだけが必要だ。なら必要なものがへねっている。カサンドラ、対信号プッシュをコンストラクト自体の経路を通じてフル処理でルーティングすれば、コンストラクトが吸収できるより強く跳ね返る。自分の武器を増幅した強さで撃つことになる。とキャンベル・アミラは言った。そうとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。非常に良いアプローチだ。とキャンベル・アミラは言った。ブラウン・カサンドラはプッシュを実行した。信号戦争コンストラクトはパーカー家族の通信インフラを攻撃するために使っていたのと同じ経路を通じて自分が生成した処理の3倍で自分自身のブロードキャスト周波数を課された。コンストラクトの信号システムがオフラインになった。すべての汚染されたデータチャンネルが9作にクリアになった。フィードはクリーンとパーカーにシールは報告した。信号戦争コンストラクトが無理化されると交戦は素早く完了した。ヴァンガードの相手し、異事情技術の将棋によって構造的に損なわれた。地上交戦を維持できなかった。イージスの相手、超侵入攻撃フレーム、流度の再調整の間ずっと利用可能なギャップが一度もなかった。パーカー・メアリー・ハイジスのバリアをコンストラクトの下端位置に向け鉄だ能力でクワンミアン投資するよう実施した。コンストラクトのターゲティングシステムが失敗した。3つのシグマ戦闘フレーム、互いに90秒以内にオフラインになった。パーカー・プリンスはメインモニターでクリアされた強戦マップを見た。シグマは彼らから学んでいた。彼らを研究していた。彼らのために特定に作っていた。そして彼らは実用した。致死されたからではない。システムが失敗して回避側を見つけたからではない。家族が十分に一体的で、互いを十分に深く信頼して依存するようになっていたサポート、インフラがない状態で機能できたから。そしてそのインフラへの脅威を廃母ではなく機械として使えたから。彼はチゲテーブルに歩いた。パーカー・メアリーはすでにそこにいた。シグマはまた作ると彼女は言った。はいとパーカー・プリンスは言った。今回よりよく。はい。なら、それになる前に今回より良くなる必要がある。パーカー・プリンスは気をめきた。自分を打ち抜かすために特定に設計された強戦を通じてフレームを操縦してきて、通過したことよりも次に帰ることを考えている誰かの特定の安定した地を。はい、と彼は3度目に言った。同じ言葉、毎回違う重みで。ブラウン・カサンドラはパーカー・メアリーをイージスベイで見つけた。パーカー・メアリーはイージスのガントリーのコンボに立ち、人とめのシャシを見上げていた。検査ではなく、重要な何かをマシンに委ねて、その信頼を認めている誰かの特定の地で、機動性アプローチ、 私はそれを予測しなかった。そう、あなたにやわなかった。サイバーバイパーの中からテレメトリを見ていた。イージスが吹き始めたとき、横向きに、あの速度でフレームに異常があると思った。焼き半秒間、私もそう思った。二人はしばらく同じフレームを見上げた。おばあちゃん、コンストラクトはあなたが存在することを知って作られた。私たちのデータを持っていた。イージスを知っていた。それに対する特定の答えを作った。一時停止。そしてあなたはその答えを無関係にした。答えは私の特定のバージョンのために作られたとパーカー・メアリーは言った。地面を保持するバージョン。シグマは私習慣のデータを研究した。刺習慣でパターンを変なんだ。ブランカサンドラ・オージェンタ市場全能で宝くばないのは刺繍館のデータにないすべてだ。それが今夜の意味だったとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。はい。とパーカー・メアリーは言った。それがそうだった。休んでとパーカー・メアリーは言った。ガルータにお父さんが明日の朝、ヴァンガードシミュレーター出入り飯検査を実行したいと思う。そしてあなたにフェてほしいと思う。分かっている。スケジュールをテキストで送ってきた。パーカー・メアリーは彼女を見た。ヘが何をしたね。テキストを送った家族チャンネルに明日の訓練スケジュール。パーカー・メアリーはこれを考えた。あなたのおじいちゃんは家族チャンネルを使って訓練スケジュールを送っている。過去2週間、パーカー・メアリー・ハイジスを見た。表情の今日が別のコンテキストでは、気象海の始まりに冷えたかもしれない何かをした。いぎなって休んでと彼女は言った。ブラウン・カサンドラは言いなった。そしてメンテナンスベイの琥珀色の光の坂で、イージスはクレードルに戻っていた。修正され、精錬され、パイロットがそれを学ぶようにパイロットを学んでいた。シグマが次に作るものが何であれ準備ができて、今夜より良くなる。そして彼らもそうなる。第8話は終わり。適応する脅威。敵があなたの命を学ぶとき。